Order this Bedford County School Board meeting for tonight, Thursday, March 13th. Ms. Johnson, if you will, please call the roll. I'm sorry, before you do that, Ms. Johnson, I have two board members who have notified me they will not be here tonight, and that's Mr. Johnny Knight and Mr. Matt Holbrook.
Mr. M. Hill,
Here.
Mr. Daniels,
Here.
Mr. S. Hill,
Here.
Dr. Hubach,
Here.
Mrs. Purvis. Mr. Chairman, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to allow board members to participate remotely?
So moved. Second.
Second, all right. So I have a motion by Mr. Daniels and I have a second by Dr. Hubach. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that motion passes. Okay, so Ms. Purvis, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill, S. Hill. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved. If you will, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Purvis,
Yes.
are you able to mute your phone until you need to
Yes.
speak? Okay, perfect, thank you, because it's coming through, so just wanted to ask that, appreciate that. All right, if you will, please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, moving to staff reports, 2.01 Superintendent's Report, Mr. DePere.
I'd like to again thank the school board members and the executive team for kind of keeping up with me in my medical progress. I'm doing much better. I just want you guys to know that, and I appreciate your prayers. It's been a journey, and I don't think I made it without you guys' assistance and help. I want to start every meeting with the same discussion because I think it's really important. If you look on the screen, I don't think we've advertised enough how significant or important this is. So in principals meeting the other day, I talked about having some posters made where we could put this in offices and begin to talk about the significance of that rise of 105, 56 to 36. I think it's hugely important for the community to know that. And I'm not going to elaborate, but I had a conversation at a gas pump with a dad who is a homeschooler, and why not Bedford County? And I don't think enough people understand the significance of that movement and the dedication of the teachers. So I want to keep bringing that forward whenever we can. This needs to be a focal point of where we are because we have some great teachers and we want to celebrate what they've done, and some great instructional staff have moved our teachers as well. So I do want to keep moving that. It's highly significant. The other thing that you've seen a lot of in the last couple of weeks is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the NAEP scores. And so I kind of wanted to highlight what those are and how they're used on a national and a state basis. So the NAEP score does not report individual school or division data for comparison. A small sample of students in grades 4 to 8 take the test each year. Typically 30 students in each grade level are invited to do so per division. The schools and the students are chosen randomly, and the test is structured compared to state performances. There is a full disclosure of what is found for Virginia in the VDOE National Report Card. You can find it on the VDOE website. The NAEP report of January 29th states that Virginia, like much of the nation as a whole, saw declines in 4th and 8th grade reading and math results from 2019 to 2024. I think it's significant that we keep in mind that a lot of this reflects a prolonged and pervasive negative impact that school closures and unnecessary disruptions and shift to remote learning had on our children during the pandemic. And so this whole process is about correcting what we did to the students during that time frame. Since the winter of 2024 NAEP test administration, Virginia schools have fully implemented the Virginia Literacy Act. The VLA ensures that every student in kindergarten to fifth grade receives core literacy instruction rooted in scientific-based reading, research, and evidence-based literacy instruction. In addition, the forthcoming year, as we look at where we're going in 25-26, the Literacy Act is again kind of ramping up, so to speak. And what they're providing for our schools is a core curriculum for fourth and fifth graders, supplemental and intervention curriculum for grades 4 to 8, and professional development for middle school teachers to build their knowledge and evidence-based literacy instruction aligned with science-based reading research. So we can continue to see growth in the areas of 4 to 8 because the Virginia Literacy Act has put an emphasis on this. So that's important to remember. While the NAEP is a good indicator of 4th to 8th grade reading and math achievement across the nation and state levels, we will continue to focus on where our BCPS students are in this progress and continue our commitment to reading and math excellence. And I'm very proud of where we are in this process and those sitting at the table that contribute to this. The use of Chromebooks is the next topic I want to look at. A detailed explanation was provided on Wednesday memo sent on February 4, 2025, entitled Information Request from Budget Work Session. The instruction team recommends that we continue using Chromebooks as a tool for instruction, and I highlight this not for providing instruction, because all SOL and benchmark testing is only offered on digital format. Our state standards require the integration of technology on all core courses. We recognize that students should be taught digital citizenship while also being taught how to be competent learners on the computer and from textbooks. Chromebooks are not the issue. It is appropriate use of Chromebooks and the amount of time spent on off-task site that is the instructional issue. We are committed to working with our school-based leadership on proper use of technology and the need for more FaceTime teaching. Next topic is future rezoning consideration. This will start in FY 25-26 and will involve a 2 to 3 year study of financial considerations on zone-to-zone study of school capacities, projected county zone-by-zone housing unit considerations, and the financial cost to the division of under-capacity schools based on SOQ standards. There will be more information coming to this as we enter into the 25-26 school year. I also want to highlight the number of executive orders and how they relate to Bedford County, as I think most people don't understand that Bedford County predated a lot of these executive orders with making corrections beforehand. So there are prominently 4 executive orders that really do come into play in schools, and they are EO, rolled back federal recognition of gender identity, EO, ending radical indoctrination of K-12 schooling, EO, keeping men out of women's sports, which includes a Title IX reversion back to 2020 version, and EO, eradicating anti-Christian bias. What most people don't know is that we have several policies that have actually predated this, as I said before. The most significant is policy INB, entitled Teaching About Controversial Issues, found in Section I, Instructional Program, dated June 8, 2023, which discusses a lot of the issues that the executive orders discuss. Policy INB states, in accordance with the BCPS non-discrimination policy, all staff shall be mindful that all children are created equal. And it breaks it down into 4 areas. 1, particular race, ethnic, religion, disability status, or sex is not inherently superior or inferior over another. Number 2, an individual solely by virtue of their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex is not inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. Number 3, an individual shall not be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely and partially because of their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex. And an individual's moral character is not determined by their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex. In addition to this, teachers have been told that they cannot have discussions regarding sexual orientation and gender identity. Policy I and B goes into explaining those two those two definitions very well. And I would encourage anybody to go on our website and to look at those policies as it relates to any information that they need. In addition, and currently active, BCPS has 3 other policies that relate to I and B, and the first is found in non-discrimination, Section A, Foundations and Basic Commitments, which is Code AC, which was revised in June 10th, 2021, and 2 policies in prohibited harassment and retaliation found in Sections J for students and G for personnel. They were both revised in December 9th of 2021 and are relatable to the aforementioned I and B. All of those go into discrimination, and they go into a lot of the things that a lot of these federal executive orders are beginning to address. So they are on board docs, and for anybody that needs to reference them, I would say, and I've heard one of our board members say this, we are, because of what the board's activities were in prior, I kind of think that Bedford is on the cutting edge of being ahead of this. So I commend the board for that. As a reminder, in discussions about policy, I just want to remind everybody that the VHSL transgender policy has been updated as of February 10th. That vote by executive committee was 31-0 to bring the league in compliance with the federal executive order keeping men out of women's sports. The VHSL Executive Committee has directed VHL staff to immediately propose policy changes that would form an emergency legislation to comply with this executive order. The next item is something that came out of my SWAT discussions on a lot of campuses. And my recommendation, and it's usually, it needs to stay in place for 3 to 5 years anyway, my recommendation is that our current strategic plan be continued with one exception. And we know when we look through this, we see that the first point is that we will maintain a high academic expectation and support students in obtaining foundational knowledge, transferable skills, and post-graduation plans. Secondly, we will provide a safe and supportive learning environment. Third, we will create an exemplary workforce by recruiting, supporting, compensating, and retaining high-quality employees. And then the fourth is where I want to add in something that I think is really important, and that is we need to start looking at a volunteer program because we don't use the community enough in Section 4. So what I'm looking to do over the next couple of weeks is I start next week at a PTA meeting and address this issue in Boonesboro, where a PTA organization can pick this up. What I'm going to ask them to do is to formulate a volunteer program within their PTA, and where PTA organizations don't exist because the schools just don't have the parent manpower to do it, then we need to look at having someone fill that position, even on a part-time basis, to be able to go around and try to find people to get into the schools and supplement our teachers. I think it's very valuable when you bring retired teachers or retired engineers or whatever they are back into our schools to help our teachers. I think it's something that we're drastically missing, and it's something that came up in a lot of my SWAT discussions. The other 3 areas that I really want to speak about tonight are questions that we get in emails. And one is, how do we decide in inclement weather to do a delay or a closure? And so I want to read the statements that the executives have given me on this because I don't want to vary from this. And we are putting this on the website so that parents can refer to this. BCPS staff closely collaborate with the Office of Bedford County Emergency Management to get the most updated weather briefings from the National Weather Service and other pertinent information regarding potential storms. We also closely collaborate with the Virginia Department of Transportation for update road conditions, information, and concerns. When needed and able, BCBS staff drive roads throughout the division to assess bus routes prior to making a decision. Staff also check into the surrounding school divisions. We gather all data available on current road conditions, as well as future weather forecasts that includes the approximate timing of inclement weather, temperatures, type of precipitation, and make decisions that best keep students and staff safe as safety as a top priority. This is a commitment that we have made to make that decision prior to 5 o'clock on any given day so that parents can make plans and so that we can make the right plans as far as providing information for teachers and parents on a day before. This lends to the next question: how do we make up inclement weather days? BCBS calculates 990 hours as the school year and not school days. BCBS banks hours, and we have approximately 1,350 hours built into our current schedule. The state requires that we make up the first 5 days missed. Once that is done, for every 1 day we make up, we are given 2. Example, if we use 6.5 days to make up a makeup day, then we're given credit for 13 hours. As of today, we know that we are using tomorrow as our first makeup day, March 14th. And so this is one way of providing back a snow day. And if we had to ask for a waiver from the governor, and you ask for waivers from the governor when the governor calls for state emergency, which he did during the month of January. So Dr. Woodford follows through on that, and if we needed to calculate hours to make up, if we needed to apply for a waiver, then that process is in place. I think we're doing fine as far as hours at this point. And so we're too worried about that right now. The last thing I wanted to discuss is the implementation of Executive Order number 33, establishing bell-to-bell cell phone-free schools. And I have been on campus and talked to some teachers who are very excited about the engagement in their classroom. And so I just want to read through a couple of things that Dr. Woodford and I have collected over time in the last couple of weeks. It was very difficult at the beginning of the year to establish a 3-week period because we kept sending them back for snow days. So we are at a point now where teachers have had this in place in their room to where we are starting to get good feedback. The principals have been informally surveyed to determine what the first 2 months have looked like. The full teacher survey was sent out this week on Tuesday, which will gather more specific information. All reports indicate that teachers feel the students are more engaged and that they appreciate the consistency of implementation through the policy and the use of the pouches. There is more positive student interaction in classes, the hallways, and in the cafeteria. A few parents have been unhappy with the process, but once a principal explains to them why we're doing what we're doing, and they understand that, it usually turns into they understand the rationale behind the implementation. Cell phone violations through discipline are leveling off. There was a slight increase at the beginning, but once students realized that the pouches were here to stay, things calmed down. Not having access to social media during the school day has decreased the number of incidents, what we would call drama, especially in middle school, talking to the middle school principals, and communication with phones. The only concern that the schools are having at this point is that the pouches have a sharp pin at the end that engages, and some of those pins are not standing the test of time. So Dr. Woodford is working with the company on how we better improve that product and how we replace them if they're broken. What I want to start from now on is that when I do a report and I put things in there like weather and inclement weather, how do we make up days, there will be a posting in the superintendent's page that will show my remarks from this point at a meeting, so people can refer back and we can refer people to the answers that we collectively as an executive board have found. Before I close out, I'd like to invite Mr. Hagler to give us an update on the calculation tool recently provided by the state as we move into projected revenue for the school year 25-26.
Yes, thank you, sir. We did receive our calc tool from the state based upon the General Assembly passing their budget. That budget is now at the governor's office and waiting for him to sign, veto, or not do anything. I'll come back to that in a minute. The General Assembly, it was quite a bit bipartisan to pass this budget. In the House, it was 81-18 in favor for it, and in the Senate it was 27-3. So a lot of bipartisan getting this bill through. if the governor vetoes it, it goes back to the General Assembly, and they gotta work through that veto session. And so that postpones us being able to finalize our budget. If he signs it, then this is what it is. If he does nothing, from my understanding, then the budget that was passed last year, which is a biannual budget, is what's in place. Nothing gets done, no changes happen. So, I think March 24th is the deadline for him to take action, so I'll be watching that closely. And if it does pass, then the only other thing we have to wait on is the Board of Supervisors letting us know our funding, and then we can reconvene as a board and finalize our budget. So I'll keep you all updated on that. The good news from the General Assembly is they made two changes that hopefully are all in our favor and that can help us balance our budget. The first is they went back to the pre-recession support figures. So quite a bit more money came in from that. In addition, it's called a special education add-on. Now, Kelly Jennings, Director of Special Education, and myself have contacted Department of Education and going, what is it, and can we use it to balance our budget, or do we have to spend that on new stuff? We have not received an answer yet. So it seems like people at the Department of Education don't know what that is, which is surprising, but we're trying to find out. So all told, about 2.1 million more from the General Assembly. 400,000 of that is the special ed add-on, which we don't know if we can use that to balance the budget. It might be that we have to spend 400,000 on new stuff or new staff in order to get that. So somewhere between 1.6 to help balance our budget to 2.1, depending on that 400, if the governor signs this budget. So very positive. The vast majority was that recognizing the support cap. We're well above that, and most districts are. It's just the state recognizing that. So that is, we already have those positions. That helps us balance our budget. I have communicated that to the county administration as they're working through their budget. And my notes to them was, this is all predicated on the governor sign it. Nothing's locked. So we'll continue to monitor and keep the board updated on that. Any questions on the state budget? Okay, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding superintendent's comments? All right. 2.02, overview of the new accountability model. Dr. Woodford?
Good evening, members of the board. During the summer of 2022, the Virginia Board of Education began a review of the school accreditation model with the intent of evaluating the model's effectiveness and transparency. In September of 2023, the Virginia Board of Education directed the Virginia Department of Education to design a new accountability system that was transparent, easy to understand, and ensured preparation of students for their next phase of education. So tonight, I would like to share with you the model, which is called the School Performance and Support Framework, that has been approved by the Virginia Board of Education and will be used for our accountability beginning with our spring test. Prior to the approval of Virginia School Performance and Support Framework in January of this year, schools in the Commonwealth had two separate systems of accountability. One that focused on the state requirements for performance, and another one that was used to calculate federal accountability. These two systems were confusing when used together and so complicated that there was a concern that the systems were not communicating students' actual performance in Virginia. So the new system separates accountability and accreditation. As you can see on the chart in front of us on the screen, on the right side of that slide is the accreditation model. Schools will be accredited based on meeting the state's statutory obligations and operational compliance. This would include pieces of the standards of quality. So some examples, did we offer the right courses to allow students to get their diploma? Did the school do all of their required fire drills? Did we hire the correct number of staff? And so those items are all certified through reports that we give to the Department of Education throughout the year. Our focus tonight is really on the left side of the screen if you're looking at it, and that's the Virginia School Performance and Support Framework that is actually going to be our accountability measures that are really looking at academic achievement. As you can see in this diagram, schools will have 3 areas of focus that will determine their overall performance in academics. The elementary and middle schools will have the 3 areas of mastery, growth, and readiness. And high schools will replace the academic growth piece, and they will focus on graduation. The 3 areas of focus for overall performance are weighted. This chart provides an easy understanding of what each component is weighted to provide a total score for each school's performance rating. The shifting of weighting in categories is indicative of the focus that the Virginia Board of Education really wanted in Virginia schools. So for instance, the readiness indicator increases in weight from elementary to high school to indicate the Virginia Board of Education's focus on readiness after high school for employment, enrollment, or enlistment, which they would call readiness for life. The minute calculations can get a little complicated. We've shared a lot with the CPO committee, and so we're just kind of keeping it at a high level. So you can see the overall weightings for our systems. So let's start with the elementary indicators and define what the state is measuring in each of those 3 categories that are identified for academic performance. So we'll look first at mastery. Mastery is going to measure performance on the reading, math, and science SOL test, which will include VAP test. VAP tests are tests for our students with significant disabilities, and it's more of a portfolio assessment. So all of our VAP tests and our SOL test will be used to measure mastery in the overall calculation. There is also a focus in this accountability system on the progress of English language learners, which will count for 10% of the overall mastery measure. This is the only time that the Board of Education is looking at any type of subgroup, and that's our English language learners. There has been a lot of discussion about schools who don't really have a significant number of English language learners. If you only have 1, that's a lot that 10% would count for that. So they're looking at some weightings that would be more division level. They're also looking at not using the SOL test for this, but using the WIDA test, which is a test we give to our English language learners when they come to our schools, so that we can gauge what level of English language they've acquired. The second indicator is growth, and this is measured through a system called the Virginia's Visualization and Analytics Solution, which we call VVAS. This tool calculates a student's expected growth in reading and math over time based on that student's prior performance on SOL test and the performance of all students in Virginia taking that SOL test. So VVAS will provide an expected score in reading and math for every student individually. I would consider that like a goal for where we would want our students to reach. The reason that the State Department is looking at growth is because if you have a high achiever who typically does well on an SOL test, we want to make sure that they're getting the highest score, that we want them an advanced pass. We want them not to just pass the test, but pass it with a high score. So growth can be achieved by any student in our system. So schools receive credit for students who meet or exceed the expected growth that's been calculated in VVAS. The final component of the elementary performance is readiness. So the readiness indicator measures chronic absenteeism and the 5 C's performance task. So the 5 C's are critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, and citizenship. The performance task to measure these areas has not yet been created. So this year, chronic absenteeism will count for the full 10% of the overall rating. Next year, as they develop the performance task and our students take that, chronic absenteeism will move to 5% and the performance task, the other 5%. The middle school model is exactly the same as the elementary model in what is measured. It's measured the exact same way. Growth and mastery are just weighted a little lower and readiness a little higher. As I described, as we move up in grade levels, the weightings within the school is different because we're trying to get our focus on graduation and readiness for students. So again, measured exactly the same, they're just weighted a little differently. And then finally, our high school components. So the high school components are not only different, but they also have different data that they're used to be measured. For the mastery portion of the component, we're still looking at reading, math, and science performance and the overall progress of our English language learners in school. Readiness, it does include chronic absenteeism, just like in the elementary and middle school model, but it also adds the 6-year graduation rate with students who receive an applied studies diploma. These are our students with disabilities that stay in our educational program longer and graduate after 5 or 6 years in high school. This has never been used in the calculation for accountability before, and I think it's a positive addition. It recognizes the work of our students that receive their diploma that may just need a little bit more time, and it gives them and the school credit for that continued work. The second indicator is the school's graduation rate. This is a measure of students that have received their diploma in what we call on time, which means within the 4-year span of high school, just as we would expect. So they graduate as a senior after they've been in high school for 4 years. And then the final readiness indicator is the Ready for Life 3E framework, which I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail. So the 3E Readiness Framework is also an index rating system based on rigor and experience. So as stated, students can earn points for multiple experiences in high school that are preparing them for life. So specifically, the calculation here is a little bit more in depth, but is an example of what is measured. So for instance, when we look at the enrollment category, that category is focused on enrollment in a 2 or 4-year college. You can see that students are assigned points for any category they meet the standard in. So a student can earn a 1 and 2/2500 points for earning an associate's degree before graduating. Those are our students who are in our early college program who graduate with their diploma and with a 2-year associate's degree. Then you can see the weighting changes. They'll receive 1 point if they take 3 or more college level courses, which we call dual enrollment, and earn a minimum of a B. And then you can see the progression here. So as we have, 1 to 2 credit bearing college ready courses, we start looking at AP scores if they're taking AP tests. So in essence, you want as many points as you can get. So that's how these points are assigned. You can see the same thing in employment. In employment, we're really focused on our CTE credentialing. So a full point for anyone who's a CTE completer. The catch here is that they receive an industry credential in a high demand, high wage field. So the DOE actually publishes and in conjunction with the Employment Commission in Virginia, what are those high demand, high wage fields? And so if we have students doing a CTE completer, they can get a point for that. Remember, you don't have to be a Gibson student to get a CTE completer. That's the goal when you're at Gibson. We want that in all of your credentials. But we can get completer series at the high school, which has been a focus for multiple years. So we're just recognizing that career and technical. And then the final focuses on enlistment. And that looks at scores on the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, or the ASVAB test, or the Armed Forces Qualification Test, which is the AFQT. As you can see, you could have a student who may have an associate's degree, complete a CTE completer credential, and decide they want to go in the military at some point and take the ASVAB and earn a high score. So students can get points in multiple areas. So that's something we'll be looking at. it all comes from the reports that we do for DOE to calculate that. We're not going through our kids and counting their points, but our goal is to get as many points as possible. And I think we've had a really good focus on all of that through our CTE expansion, with our JROTC program at Gibson, and then our push for dual enrollment at AP, and the board really taking on helping pay for AP tests and things like that. We have more kids who are involved in that. So based on all of that data calculated in weighted formulas, the school will then be given an overall performance category label. And those labels are distinguished, on track, off track, and needs intensive support. And you can see, so schools who receive in the large system, so elementary, if they have mastery, growth, and readiness, and they get between 90 and 100 points, they're distinguished. And then it continues 80 to 89, that school is on track. Between 65 and 79, they're off track and need a little bit more support. And then below 65 points, needing intensive support. We got some preliminary data where the state took our scores from last year and tried to give us a performance category for each of our schools. And most of our schools were in the distinguished or on track. And we had 2 schools that came into off track. They were just a point or 2 below that 65. And we think, looking at the data, it was really chronic absenteeism, which we've been working on. So we hope that, just from those preliminary looks at performance, that this year we will be okay. Of course, we're always considering, as an instructional team, there is a new English test and a new math test with new English and math standards this year. So fingers crossed that our mastery continues the way it should. And then, sorry, I'm stuck. Finally, all schools are then ranked by their performance scores, and the bottom 5% of schools in the state are identified for federal improvement. So this is how the state of Virginia is going to use the same system to say where schools are at the state requirements, and then the bottom 5% of those schools are identified for federal improvement. So that's how we get both accountability systems using the same data. I will say, in the past, we have been federally identified because of 1 or 2 subgroups. There are no subgroups except for EL learners in the new system. So I feel really good that we're probably not going to fall in the bottom 5%. Our schools do really, really well. So again, 95% of the schools in Virginia are going to have no identification, which is positive. And then the remaining schools may receive support through federal dollars to focus on student groups or overall school performance that has been lacking for more than 1 year. Again, our schools are doing really well with this, so I think the federal identification will be very positive. I know that was a lot to take in, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Questions? No? Ms. Purvis?
You've been through this a couple times.
Oh, she's been through it too.
Mhm.
The only thing did you get a commitment from the Virginia Department of Education that they would not change this for at least 5 years?
I did not get that commitment. I will say the old system has been in place for over 2 decades, so I'm hoping at least it gets me to retirement. That's all I.
Beyond that.
Beyond that.
All right, so no other
I
questions?
had just a quick question, but I know you're waiting for still a little bit more information, but on the schools that we do already have identified as not at task or whatever it was, do we have things already implemented into how to help them before we wait for any more funding, but just getting them back on track?
Absolutely.
Well, on track, I guess, or off track, I guess is the way.
Right. So when we first get scores in the summer, we immediately look towards those mastery scores. So we're already we were looking last summer at what schools needed support in math and reading and science. We've given significant support from the instructional team and the special education team in those schools. We didn't get these rankings until really late in the school year, and we had already been supporting the schools. So I feel like we're right on track based on the data we had from last year's testing to connect and support schools to keep them moving forward this school year. And I think Dr. Trosper is going to talk a little bit more about some of the support from his team in his presentation
So
too.
from a budgeting standpoint, the federal dollars, so will that change based, we're getting federal dollars today. So based on this calculation, will those dollars change? So we'll continue to get the dollars that we're getting today. This is in addition to.
Correct.
Okay.
It's an addition to, and usually it's a limited edition, like we have to write a grant for that money, and so it's about $50,000 for the school for curriculum materials, remediation, training, things like that. So it's over and above what we just get from the federal government.
I just wanted to make sure we were ahead of any budget issues that
Yes, sir.
may loom because of that, so you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I think that it's important, and as you're going through this, how, I've been on the board a couple of years, how we do talk a lot about the supports that we provide for our students. But it's been, I mean, just top priority for this board and this division of the opportunities that we give our students and we can provide for our students. So if you look at that one page that shows enrollment, employment, and enlistment, I mean, that's what we've been hitting on. And we've been pretty proud in this county with the work that goes on at Susie G, of course with the ROTC, but with all the CTE, how we've expanded that as a board. And then how we've continued to talk about how do we get more kids into dual enrollment? How do we get more into early college? What else can we provide that? If we just keep focusing on that and how we are setting our students up for success, we're going to continue to see our rankings increase. And if there's any other suggestions you guys have on what we can do from a budgeting standpoint, from the finance or any other way, I think we would be all ears to see what we can do. But always not sitting back and resting on our laurels. Say, what else can we do? What else can we do? It's a testament to the CPO committee and you guys on staff here too. So just thank you for that, and thanks for the presentation.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, 2.03 mid-year data update, Dr. Trosper.
All right, good evening. Tonight I'm going to present an overview of the first semester achievement data and support measures that we provided to our schools after receiving the data. So specifically, I'm going to focus on our VALS data for students in grades K through 3 and the benchmark scores for all core subject areas. The Virginia Language and Literacy Screening System, also known as the VALS assessment, is given to all students across the Commonwealth in the fall, mid-year, and in the spring. VALS is used for early literacy screening of students in pre-K through 3rd grade. It's designed to identify students who might be at risk for developing reading difficulties. Students are placed in one of 3 bands, which helps us identify the level of supports that we would offer them. So the scoring bands are low risk, which means there's a low likelihood of developing reading difficulties. Students are considered to be developing at grade level appropriately, and we would continue with regular class instruction. Those that are at moderate risk, there's a moderate chance of developing some reading challenges. And so they might show some areas of concern in their literacy development, and they might benefit from additional support or differentiated instruction. And then finally, we have those that are in high risk. A student is significantly elevated risk for developing reading difficulties. These kids will require targeted interventions, and they actually get an additional 2.5 hours of remediation, additional per week. So we really focus a lot of remediation efforts on them. So as a reminder, I know you love to hear this. This is the first year of giving this VALS screener. It's a change from the DOE. This replaced PALS. So you've probably heard of Phonological Awareness Literacy Screener. That's PALS. That's been given to students in Virginia for quite some time. And so this does align with the science of reading. It does align with the Virginia Literacy Act, which was recently passed. And so I'm going to go over some of our scores. And so the table on the screen actually shows results of our fall and mid-year VALS screener. So as you can see, we really are making good progress. We're really proud of our teachers and our schools. What we want to see is that the percentage of low-risk students grow from fall to mid-year, and we want to see the percentage of high-risk students decrease from fall to mid-year. And if you look at each grade, we did that. Low-risk students grew in each grade and high-risk dropped in each grade. And so we want to continue that trend on into the spring. One of the things that I would attribute that to is our new curriculum, Benchmark Advance. Our teachers have done a really nice job of trying to implement that with integrity. I also want to commend our reading specialists. They have done a really nice job of taking leadership and ownership of literacy instruction in our schools. And so not only are they remediating students that are in high risk and sometimes even moderate risk, they've really stepped up and helped our teachers implement the reading curriculum. And then something else that we've done is we have a supplemental intervention curriculum called Really Great Reading. If students don't show progress we'd like with the primary curriculum, then we will use that to help intervene even more. And so just that consistent implementation, I think, has been very successful for us. So good trend so far. Obviously, we want to keep going, but so far with VALS, we feel pretty good about where we are. The next slide talks about benchmark data. So at the end of each 9-week grading period, teachers in core content areas give students a benchmark test. Benchmark tests provide information to guide instruction and set up students for success on end-of-the-year summative and other high-stakes assessments. So the next few slides might sound familiar if you've been on the board for a few years. In working with CPO, we thought it might be helpful just to go back over some of the data that's available to our schools for some of the new board members. And so just wanted to kind of go through that again before we show the data. 2 years ago, our division joined the Comprehensive Instructional Program, or the CIP. It's a consortium of school divisions in Virginia. This consortium works with teachers in about 65 school divisions. The map shows, in the purple shows where those divisions are. And what they do is they create pacing guides, assessments to help our teachers, schools, and the district staff target needed supports based on that benchmark data. Prior to joining CIP, we didn't have a common benchmark assessment, so we really didn't have a lot of division-level data where we could use to analyze where our students are. Monitoring student, teacher, and student progress was difficult, and so now that we do have benchmarks from the CIP, they're highly aligned with the state curriculum. They're extremely rigorous compared to benchmarks given before we joined CIP, and they really help us see results relative to other divisions. So just wanted to show you what data they provide so you know what our schools and what our division staff is looking at. When looking at CIP quarterly benchmark data, there's other data points besides pass rates. We spend a lot of time on pass rates with high stakes testing, but it helps to have other data to get a real complete picture of student performance. And so this report that we get provides information to help our administrators determine if the school is going to have higher SOL scores than last year or not. And so we can find out not only pass rates, but percentile rankings that compare to other divisions. We have students with disabilities, we have their pass rates, we have disadvantaged students, English language learners, and other subgroups. So we know all that based on these reports we received from CIP. And so what I want to do is in the next few slides just show you what data reports schools are currently looking at based on first semester benchmark results. There's a lot of information schools have. There's too much to review in depth, but again, I just want you as a board to understand the data that is customized to each school and what they're looking at. So the first is the CIP percentile rankings. So schools, of course, want to improve their pass rates from year to year. What we have found is that the percentile ranking is actually the most important statistic that we use when we're analyzing benchmarks. And the same goes with CIP member divisions. When we can compare what we are doing to other school divisions, it helps us really understand how we're doing rather than looking at pass rates in isolation. So on the screen, you see one of the reports we received. It's called an analysis of scores. This just happens to be from a math benchmark that we gave not too long ago. School names are covered up on the left, but the left column would show the pass rates and the far right column would show percentile rankings where we compare with other CIP member divisions. So the green represents schools that fall in the top third of schools in CIP, yellow would be the second third, and red is in the bottom third. So I'm going to spend most of the data reports on the percentile rankings in later slides, but I did want you to see at least what that looks like before we
So
get into
real quick, why would we cover up the school names?
Those are benchmarks that represent a moment in time from a few years ago. I don't want to misrepresent that that's where we are now.
So we have data today that you guys could share with the board to show
Yes.
like, where we compare.
Correct,
Are
and
we
that's what I'm
gonna
going to
get
do
to
in the next few slides.
Okay, just want to
Yes.
make sure, okay.
Yes. So the next data our schools use comes from Mastery Connect. It's our division assessment platform. After benchmark, school staff get detailed reports about student performance on each test given. So while, again, it's useful to determine pass rates, Mastery Connect is used at the school level by teachers, instructional coaches, and administrators. So just a quick overview of what these reports look like. The one you see on screen is a school level report that's found in Mastery Connect. This is from a science benchmark that was given in the first quarter, again, a few years ago, but our teachers received the same kind of report after every assessment given. This item analysis report helps teachers identify specific skills where students struggle. So teachers use this data to provide targeted support to students at risk of failing the SOL test, either individually, in small groups, or as a whole class. If you look on that, the circled area would be SOL 4.2 bullet A. So that is one of the standards taught in this particular class. It's a standard that most students missed in this class level science benchmark, meaning that teachers are going to have to examine this question more closely to determine if remediation or reteaching is needed and which students should receive this intervention. So when teachers conduct this well and they adjust their instruction to address the skill deficits, students should score higher on their SOL test. The instruction and special ed teams were really focused on coaching and supporting teachers as they analyze these reports. And so we'll go to grade level or department meetings to help look at that data, which again is at the school level. The next report is a Mastery by Standard report, which uses color-coded percentages to show student performance on each standard. This indicates areas, again, that are needed for reteaching. So teachers can actually filter this data by subgroup to compare performance of those, for example, students with disabilities. So on the screen, there's two reports that are for the exact same test. The top chart shows performance of students with disabilities, and the chart on the bottom shows students, all the students in class. If you look at it, you can see that 5.3B, that's where that red bar is. That was a real issue with our students with disabilities, that particular standard. And so all students did okay, but we know based on this report that we really need to focus on remediating our students with disabilities. So we might talk to a co-teacher, or we might go to a resource class to really develop those skills. But ultimately, this helps us target our interventions for students and address those learning gaps. And then the final report is another variation of the Mastery by Standard. So teachers can use this report to analyze student performance by standard, viewing question counts and correct or incorrect responses. The vertical columns will show class trends, while the horizontal actually shows individual student performance. So you can break it down and see how many students showed mastery on that skill in the class. You can see how many need a little remediation and those who might need a lot. And then again, as you go in the rows, you can see really individual student performance. So again, our principals are expected to lead their staffs and guide their staffs in analyzing this data. And so that's what they are currently doing to develop their 45-day plans and other remediation plans that are getting ready for the final test. Now let's talk about this first semester. So the chart shows the subjects that we did test for our benchmarks. So generally speaking, we give our benchmarks to SOL tested courses. There's a few exceptions. So for example, in grade 4, students don't take a science SOL, but on grade 5, there is science 4 content. So we do go ahead and test to identify where we need to support our students. Each assessment is aligned with the standards from the DOE, including the new standards in English, math, and actually history went a crosswalk year as well. At the division level, we're looking at relative data, as I said, to look at student performance trends. And so that's what I'm going to go over now. So on the left side, you'll see percentile rankings for math. So these charts are going to show data, division data by course subject. And so just as a reminder, when we look at percentile rankings, for example, if a school or a subject is in the 75th percentile ranking, that means that all 75% of the scores are below students in Bedford County. Another way you might look at it is if we're in the 75th percentile ranking, that means 25% of the scores were above ours. So again, this really helps us compare rather than looking at pass rates in isolation. So if you look at math, those are the subjects that we benchmark tested on for this first semester. 3 of our subjects improved relative rankings compared to last year. 2 declined and 2 were fairly consistent by staying within 2 to 3 points of last year. As we move towards SOL testing, what we're seeing from this is we're still concerned about algebra. So while the percentile rankings have improved, that's still not quite where we want to be. We've had a lot of challenges with our high schools with algebra, and so we're going to really be working to target and support those teachers and schools. And then we're going to be monitoring grades 3, 4, and 6. They're doing okay, but they need to do better, and so we're going to keep an eye on them. In English, on the right side, 4 of our subjects improved their relative rankings. None of them declined, and 2 stayed consistent. So we feel pretty good about where we are in our English classes right now. But again, we're going to continue to monitor those individual teachers or departments or grade levels, depending on the data, that have shown areas in need of improvement, so we can ensure our scores continue to remain strong as they have in previous school years. The next chart is on science and social studies data. So if you look on the left, that's our science scores. 3 of our subjects improved their relative rankings, none declined, and 2 remained consistent. We do test in grades 5, physical, science, and biology, so we're going to monitor those, but I did just want to call your attention to Science 5. As you're aware, we've really struggled to meet our goals in science. Science 5 is one of those that's really showed great improvement, so we're really proud of them. Science 6 is one that is eventually tested on the physical science test, and so all trends look good, especially grade 5, so I do want to commend those teachers and our administrators for their hard work. And then as you look at social studies, 2 of them improved relative rankings and 1 decline. Now, in the subject that declined, the scores are still in the top tier, so it's not great concern, but it's something to keep an eye on. But I do just want to call your attention to civics. As you can tell, we really struggled last year compared to this year, and really with world geography as well. And so I again want to commend our teachers and schools for their growth. As we move towards SOL testing, we still want to improve our civics. The benefit of world geography is it's taught in 8th grade, and anyone in 8th grade is taking it as a high school credit class. So if they pass, they'll enter high school with verified credits in history. So that's a positive for those students. So that's where we are right now relative to other divisions, and kind of gives trends about where we are. And the final slide is I just wanted to let you know what we're doing as a division. After each quarter, the instruction and special education teams develop support plans for each quarter. We determine which schools are priority based on the data, and we make adjustments to the frequency and the type of support. So right now, our team is focusing on targeting schools, grade level subjects, and teachers that have demonstrated the need for more support. We're providing walkthroughs. We're meeting with teachers to plan, probably more so than any other quarter, planning with those teachers, reviewing their data, again, meeting with departments and helping them develop their 45-day plans, which goes back and targets skills or content needed that students have shown they need support in as they get to the end of the year. We are working with the special ed team and their supervisors to give feedback again and planning in co-taught classrooms. And then specifically in English, Mrs. Perdue and Dr. Eisenhower, they're looking at our writing analysis protocol reviews, which essentially students turn in writing samples. Relative to the rest of the state, we have done well with writing, but we still want to improve that. We have a long way to go. We're monitoring the implementation of the components of the Virginia Literacy Act and those high-quality instructional materials. That's still new. We're in our first year of that, so that still poses some challenges. And then finally, we're continuing to support our reading specialists as they provide leadership. Again, they've done really well this year. We're really proud of them, but we continue to work with them to help support them throughout the rest of the year. And so we will have one more round of benchmark testings in the 3rd quarter. So this is going to give us just a little bit more data to make that final push for remediation as testing begins. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I was wondering about the civics. Is that a high school class?
Civics is actually 7th grade in our middle schools.
Okay, and could it be that we need a better textbooks, or have you implemented something from maybe Hillsdale College that can help supplement some of the gaps that we have in our civics department?
Well, we have not adopted textbooks in social studies. We're using the same ones when I started teaching 18 years ago, so they're pretty old. I don't know when we adopted them. So that's a conversation we're hoping to have next year. There's always challenges in civics. I've noticed a lot of it has to do with just the support and identifying the teachers that need it. And so what we've had to do is really sit down with our principals and work on some of the newer standards And we've done a lot of common planning, and I'll commend Mr. Mabry, our supervisor of humanities, for that. They are teaching new standards this year, and they've shown a lot of improvement because I just think they're prepared for it. Certainly resources are gonna go a long way to continue that progress.
So have you used, or have you tried looking into the free stuff that's given to schools through Hillsdale and see if they have a civics supplementation that might be helpful?
Sure, we do give our teachers a lot of autonomy as far as choosing those resources, so they're certainly willing to. The guidance that we give is whatever resources they use should be aligned with the standards. And so as long as it's aligned and teaching the standards the way they're written, then that's something that they have that discretion to do.
So I guess the question is, have you encouraged them to look into that, or have you looked into Hillsdale and see if that can be something that would be a good resource, and then encourage the teachers to supplement with that?
So actually, I have looked at it and Mr. Dupere has looked at it. And the grade level pieces do not match the standards. So we really haven't pushed any of the Hillsdale information out because it doesn't match grade for grade the standards. So in that particular curriculum, I know there's a lot of extra resources Mr. Mayberry has provided, but because it wasn't aligned, we did not push that out to teachers for fear that if they don't teach aligned curriculum, it could cause issues in testing.
It certainly stands to reason, though, when you go from a percentile ranking of 11 to 52, that there's a gap there somewhere, and it's not that the kids' intelligence changed that much. It's probably what they're being taught or the resources that they did or didn't have. And so I think the question's valid.
Sure.
And maybe it sounds a little bit from what you said, Dr. Trosper, that they've got a lot of free reign. Maybe they need a little bit more structure.
I think so, and that's a conversation we really do want to have as we move into next year. We want to get through our math adoption, but that's the plan, is to start looking at social studies resources next year.
Question on those resources, so when they can go and get whatever they like, is there a cost associated with that?
If
Free resources, or we have to pay?
from the division level, no, it's something that either they would pay for or their schools would pay for. It just depends on the teacher, really, and what we do is we do have an instructional guide or a pacing guide, and we do provide some links to resources that could help them teach that. So we do that, which are at no cost to anyone, but teachers might decide they need a little bit more to supplement.
Yeah, I just want to see, like, okay, if I'm using resource A and Dr. Hubach's using resource B, and his students are performing better, I mean, that may be just a best practice to have and go, hey, we might as well just use that.
It absolutely is better when they collaborate, and that's why we've really worked hard on a reading curriculum. I think we're seeing the results of that. Teachers are collaborating. Every student is exposed to the same curriculum, same high quality curriculum, I'll add. And so I would like to get to that.
That's definitely the best practice. I think
Yes.
it can go in every subject. Awesome.
So a couple questions from me. So one, Science 5 going from 39 to 70. What did we do differently to get those results? I mean, I think that would be helpful to share, just from hey, your numbers look great. What was the change? And where did you see the most growth? So I'll just make that comment. If you're able to share some of those examples, I'll
Sure.
stop there.
Yeah, so science is, as you know, has been a real source of frustration, not just for us, but across the state. And one of the challenges we've learned with the state is the amount of reading that's on the test. It's no longer factually kind of multiple choice. You really have to go into depth, and you have to apply some complex thinking with multiple skills. So I do think some of the reading instruction has helped that. Our students have improved in their reading. The other thing we've done is Ms. Kapler has been really intentional about the common planning, like we just discussed, where we're getting teachers of the same subject in the same room, and they're planning, sharing resources, creating assessments. So I think what that comes down to is our instruction is more aligned as far as we're teaching what we need to, the new standards, and then we're also have developed the skills they need. So we hope that stays that way for the test, but it's been very intentional trying to support that grade level.
We also adopted new science textbooks
Yes.
the same year we did reading textbooks. So we feel like with that adoption, definitely more hands-on, more lab-based, more using the resources that are available in the community, and again, giving that continuity between schools.
Well, and I think that's something that we need to be shouting of, hey, community, we spent X dollars on these new textbooks. Here's what it's getting us, and this is the growth that we're seeing, if that's truly what we're seeing. So I want to make sure we're using that information. The second piece is I had asked, well, why would we cover the schools up? And we said, well, you're going to see that. Well, I don't see that. So I'm interested in how do our schools compare and what are the growth areas? And it goes back to if we're seeing green in some schools, what are they doing and how are we collaborating and sharing that with other schools? I'm sure you guys have that data. I'd be interested to see it. The second piece, Mr. Dupere, I think is very important is I know some of our schools receive federal funding or additional funding. So I'm interested to know what are we spending per pupil at each school and what are the results? Because I want to understand what we're spending versus what are these results and how do they compare? Because if we're seeing better results where we're spending more money, okay, but if we're not, then what do we need to change? So we need to know what the whole story is. And look, the results are, I mean, the green is great. I mean, this is what we want to see. I'm interested in the next layer of how is each school in Bedford County performing. Now, that's just me. Are you guys?
Well, I think that the percentile ranking in and of itself tells you where you fall in that 65 school consortium,
Right.
right? You know, and to directly, when you see comparison between us and our neighboring counties, like, Franklin, Campbell, and Amherst, because this looks at the whole group, the big CIP
Right.
group.
Well, I'm interested in that, but I'm also down to Bedford County. Like, where do we compare
Oh, school to school.
school to school? Yeah, I think that's important. That's what I'm after. So from an instructional, like in science, how much have we increased spending on instructional?
I think our probably biggest expense was the textbook, which they've now had for 2 years. I do think there has been intentional support in classrooms where we have young, inexperienced teachers, and a lot of Ms. Kapler going in and modeling. She has worked to have teachers who are getting really good scores meet, model, plan with our newer teachers. So I think it's really intention. Most of the time, it's about alignment of the curriculum. Are you teaching what is going to be tested? And so I think that's the way we have attacked it, because just putting money and resources isn't necessarily going to get us the results if we don't have people understanding how to teach what they're supposed to teach. So I think that's really where we focused.
And not only, you mentioned hands-on, so that's why I was interested in, well, what kind of instructional dollars have we spent on hands-on? So,
All of that comes with our science adoption. So when we adopted, it came with the pieces, consumables, and some of the things are just very common items you would have in a school that we already have with science kits and things like that. So, yeah.
yeah, and please don't take any of these questions as negative. I mean,
Oh, I'm
this
not
data
taking
is
it.
great, so this is good. And of course, the green for growth, I mean, is absolutely what we want to see. And even if it's not green civics going from 11 to 52, I mean, that's an improvement, and that's what we want to see. So I
We
really
spent a
appreciate
lot
this
of time,
information.
yeah, we spent a lot of time with CPO last meeting, kind of talking about what is good data to share and what is not good data to share. And we really struggled over the benchmark, kind of talked a lot about it, and so this is good feedback.
All right. Any other questions?
I would like to see a little bit more collaboration within each department. I have talked to some teachers who say they don't really do any collaboration with other teachers in the same subject. And I realized we had some PD days that were changed because of snow days and so on, but I would still like to see more of the PD, personal development or professional development done with collaborations, more collaborations among the teachers, even from one school to the other, especially those schools that are struggling having fresh ideas from other, for example, science teachers or other math teachers or other reading teacher specialists from other schools. I don't know if that's actually something that even is an opportunity that they have, where a day where you might have all of the English teachers, high school English teachers meet in one school and during professional development day, and all the math teachers, middle school math teachers meet in another area. But I think, my husband was an executive at Centra, and one of the things that they would often talk amongst themselves about, oh, how do we solve this problem? But they don't find the best practices other places and other hospitals that have already done all of the work. So I'd love to see that as well, where there's, we find some other schools in Virginia that are doing it well, whatever the subject is, and then have some of them come in and talk about, well, what did they do differently? How did they implement it? Finding best practices throughout the state and using those resources to improve our scores as well.
All right. Just as a reminder, and I want to go back to the positives, we're 36 overall. So, I think that's a reminder. We're doing the right things. So, again, don't take any of those questions or comments as negative. It's just, I'm interested in school to school is what I'm really interested in, of how we're doing. So, all right. In closing that out, Ms. Jennings, we're going to skip over you for just a second. I promise it won't be long term. We're going to go to public comment. The public comment portion of tonight's agenda is limited to 40 minutes. Speakers are asked to state their name and voting district. The school board is here to listen to your comments, but will not engage or respond to speakers during this 40-minute period. Please remember that this is a public meeting and that we expect all speakers to refrain from any foul, profane, abusive, or hateful language during their comments or any time while in attendance during this meeting. We also ask that speakers keep their remarks objective and about the school in nature. Please keep all comments limited to matters related to the public schools, and any comments that are harassing or amount to a personal attack against any identifiable individual, whether board member or staff or student, or having the potential to cause unnecessary delay or disruption to this meeting are prohibited. This is a public meeting for public matters. If a speaker is not present when their name is called, we will proceed with the next name on the list. An individual who has not signed up to speak may not substitute for that time slot. Individuals will have 4 minutes to address the board. An alarm will sound when an individual has 30 seconds remaining, and a second alarm will sound when the allotted 4 minutes have expired. When this second alarm sounds, please discontinue speaking and allow the next person in line to come to the podium. Should you be unable to finish your comments, please send or give them to Ms. Johnson, and she will give them to board members. Please do not adjust the microphone at the podium as it has been positioned for optimum audio quality. That was a whole lot to then say. We have nobody signed up for public comment. However, if there is anyone here tonight that would like to speak, you are welcome to speak at this time. All right, nobody is rushing up, so I am going to close public comment time for tonight. All right, Ms. Jennings, we will go back to you for the annual special education plan and funding applications.
Yes, sir. So every year I present this, and this is for your information to review and then look at next month for an action. So in accordance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, which is IDEA, the regulations governing special education programs for children with disabilities in Virginia, and School Board Policy IGBA, local school divisions must submit an annual plan with applications for the provision of special education and related services to all eligible students with disabilities who reside within the jurisdiction as an agreement for implementing federal and state laws. I did present this annual plan to our SEAC, our Special Education Advisory Committee, on March 5th, 2025, which is one of the requirements as well before I present it to the board. Are there any questions?
Was there any comments or feedback from the SEAC that you would like to share?
No, we go through each part and each comment. I think it's more of, we'd like to see more funding with the many positions that we have, and especially not being able to find special education teachers, speech therapists. How can we find more funding to be able to support them and to have teachers stay and retention? That was the main comments.
Well, it sounds like there's gonna be 400K somewhere, right? In the state,
We are hoping.
potentially?
If you earmark that, it depends on what you do with the budget and
Yeah,
stuff,
no,
because we've got a shortage, we've got a,
It was special education funds, right, the 400,000.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just,
yeah, and going back to what we were talking to our legislators on, we're like, we're funding all these additional aids and stuff that the state doesn't recognize.
Right.
I'm hoping that this was a recognition of that. Let's help you out a little bit more with the funding on that, so help you balance your overall budget.
Okay.
But some of it might be earmarked to say, you have to meet these thresholds. So we gotta look at the red tape and the calculations on how that has to be spent, whether we're already meeting those thresholds or we have to do more to meet those thresholds.
any other questions?
Sir?
Ms. Purvis, you good?
Surprisingly, yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jennings. 6.01 supplemental appropriations, Mr. Hagler.
Yes, we brought these at the last meeting for information, so they're before you tonight for action. If the board approves these, I will have these lined up with the board of supervisors for them to take action as soon as possible.
Do I have a motion to approve 6.01 supplemental appropriations?
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Hill. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Hubach. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 6.01 is passed or is approved. 6.02, approval of Bedford Elementary lighting upgrade bid. Mr. Hagler?
Yes, this was a project that was on our CIP. We went out for bid on this, sealed bid. Price came in under what we had to do sealed bid on, so we're very pleased with that. So we're very pleased with the price that came in on this. You can see the firms on the bid sheets that came in. Recommendation from the facility committee, who reviewed the bid and asked questions and looked at this, is that we proceed forward with awarding the contract to Facility Solutions Group for $186,838. That would be lighting upgrades for Bedford Elementary, scheduled for the summer.
Do I have-
Is any questions on
do I
that?
have-
What upgrades are?
So Bedford Elementary, about 12, 13 years ago, we did it's called an Oresco contract with the county. And all of our schools, we did lighting upgrades. At the time we did them, it was like on right when LED was coming out, so the price break wasn't there. But the fluorescent lights, technical term, they're discontinuing these T12 lights, which are the bigger fluorescents, down to the T8s. Well, Bedford Elementary wasn't touched. We didn't own it at the time. It was part of the city's, the city owned it at the time before reversion. So it was not upgraded. So they have the old T12s in there. We need to start moving out of there, having trouble finding those, and those are discontinued. Now it makes sense to upgrade that to LED. So that's the plan.
So that's primarily what they're doing. I thought it was a huge price discrepancy between Moore's Electric and the facilities group.
Our maintenance team checked on the group that put the bid in. They're doing quite a bit of work up at Virginia Tech, and so it may be, they're a big national firm, but they probably have a lot of work. We're thinking they have a lot of work going on at Virginia Tech, so with that, they have teams already here. They can come down here and grab on this one and get it knocked out. So, yeah, we had it pegged in a lot higher, came in at this. We've done some checks on that, so they feel very confident they get this done.
I'm sure the facilities committee has talked about. Do we have any other things that might want to get moved up since they're doing pretty good at Virginia Tech? Do we have any other lighting that we might want to move around?
Well, the question about LED is, do you go on ahead and you have the funds to swap it all out and start getting electrical savings, and it pays back over time? What we're doing right now, as the T8s that we all replaced, as those go bad, we're replacing those with LED as they go bad in various places. So we're not doing a whole school at one time. The CIP projects that we have pegged will carry the money that we have available for that, will carry us forward until about 2030. After that, there's a question mark. So to go ahead and do a whole bunch of lighting might jeopardize projects that are 2 or 3 years out. That's just my opinion at this point, but we could talk to the committee about that.
What was the difference in what we had pegged for this project versus what?
we were thinking it's gonna come in at about 300,000, to be honest.
Okay, so you got $114,000 that you could go ahead and do some LED lights.
As I said, we could go do some more, but we've got a lot of other projects that we wanna see the bids come in from. This is encouraging that we had this many vendors come in.
Okay.
I hope that bodes
Great.
well for our PPA projects and future projects, that there's more appetite, more competition, so we're gonna get better prices. During the last 4 or 5 years, people are going, I don't want any more work, so I'm just gonna throw a price out and
Take it.
So I think we're seeing a change in the market there, whether good or bad, if you're in a construction business, but it might be advantageous to us. So we'll take it to the committee, but as we get these other bids and money's freed up, we can do some other projects too.
Okay.
Just speaking for the committee on this part, it's also, right now, it's a volatile market when it comes to materials. I know we just purchasing a big aluminum building for Bedford Primary, this kind of things. Those are starting to increase pretty major right now. So I think what we talked about was, hey, great, we came under on this one, we might go over on the next one.
Yeah.
Exactly, with the tariffs and stuff, even with our PPA projects, Jamerson Lewis is even trying to get those things purchased because of the metals and the steel and all that. So there's a lot of things going on nationally that could impact this too, so, but very pleased with this one.
I had one question for you, Randy. We know that the LED lights that are blue are very detrimental. They don't work very well on the mental health of the students. They do create LED lights that are more yellow, less harder on the eyes. I want to make sure that we're using those instead of the blue light ones.
I will check into that. I do not have the answer to that right now. I know with LED, you don't have to put as many bulbs up there or you'll go blind because it'll just light up everything. So we'll check into that and report back to the committee on that. And I don't have in front of me exactly the, what you call it, hue or
I think you can
color
use
scheme on
sunlight
that.
spectrum.
Yeah, the spectrum, color spectrum on that. So we'll see if we can adjust that.
It would be more, it's more helpful for the kids. I know that my husband especially is very sensitive to that, and just walking in Walmart is just terrible.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that we don't create the same kind of environment in our schools.
Okay. We'll check on that and I'll get an update to the full board on that, the lighting spectrum we're looking on there. Thank you for that word.
Do I have a motion to approve 6.02 as presented?
So moved. Sorry, Chris.
All right, got Mr. Daniels first. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Have a second by Mr. Hill. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, 6.02 is approved. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chair, pursuant to Code of Virginia, I make motion that pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A127, that we go into closed session for 1, the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific employees of Bedford County Public Schools. 2, for the purpose of discussion or considering of disciplinary matters concerning students enrolled in Bedford County Public Schools, being student number 031325A and student 031325B. 7, for the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Purvis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now in closed session. Motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Kubot. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we are out of closed session. Ms. Johnson?
Whereas the Bedford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And where Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bedford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Let's see,
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Sorry, couldn't get your eye contact, man. Sorry about
Wasn't sure
that.
which one we're going first.
All right. Do I have a motion on action on closed meeting items?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we uphold the superintendent's recommendation for student 031325A, for student 031325B, and for employee E31325A.
I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. S. Hill. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that action passes. I have a motion on the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. S. Hill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Purvis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have the approval of the consent agenda is passed. All right, matters from the board, committee reports, Mr. Hill?
Yeah, we had the PPA committee, we kind of getting kicked off with the Bedford Primary Gym. So we had a meeting before that got started and then a groundbreaking ceremony last week, so that was moving forward. We'll be meeting again out there at Bedford Primary at the end of this month. Just kind of check on progress and start working on the upcoming 2 projects in the summer. Also with the facilities committee, the big thing was the Bedford Elementary lighting bid, going through that, making sure the contractors that were doing those bids, we felt that the low bid, we could also do the job. We also reviewed the other upcoming projects, the Forest Elementary School roofing bid, Big Island Roofing, Boonesboro Atrium, New London VCT floor tile replacement, Forest Middle School, baseball field, Bedford Primary painting, Bonita windows, Stanton River wastewater treatment, and Stewartsville HVAC. So those are all coming up this summer.
Sounds like a great list. We've been working on that a long time, Mr. Hagler.
Maintenance seems gonna be busy this summer.
There you go. Awesome.
Yep.
Yep. Mr. Daniels?
So the IGA committee met this past Tuesday. Had one thing that we'll be bringing up in the next meeting for information. We will be meeting again on April 29th.
All right, CPO met and we talked about the math curriculum adoption that's coming up, and we have been through the public display of the materials, and we had just a huge outpouring of public to look at that. Not really at all. So we're trying to get some more internal input from the teachers, particularly in the math department. And that's gonna happen later this month. And hopefully we will make a final adoption. I guess VDOE came in with some latecomers that got approved for alignment with Virginia SOLs. And so there's new stuff to look at even as we come down to the wire, so it's a little crazy, right?
We're making it work.
Family life curriculum also met. We had a very productive meeting. And we have one more meeting before we kind of finalize some of the new curriculum to bring before the board.
Again, good stuff. That's awesome. All right, Ms. Purvis?
Unfortunately, I was sick this week, so I was not able to attend, but I did request information from GovSchool about our options with going back to having CVCC be our umbrella as opposed to Lynchburg College. I think that from what I understood, the contract we have with Lynchburg College or University of Lynchburg was for 5 years. We have 2 more years to go, and they did not want to break that contract. And then I also found out that Dr. Smith is planning to retire in 2 years, so in 2 years we'll be able to reassess what would be the most cost-effective way of continuing GovSchool through CVCC or through the University of Lynchburg, so we're working on that.
Finance Committee, and I'm sorry, did you have something else you
I
wanted?
can do it in my comments.
Okay. Randy and I have talked, we're gonna be setting up a meeting shortly. We don't have one scheduled yet, but we're gonna do that. One of our next missions is, we've gone through line item by line item on the financials. Now we wanna go through and understand where the money, like, who are the businesses that we're using? Where are we sending dollars to? So to understand who we're doing business with and to understand where that is going out of each of those accounts. So more just looking at the overall financial and who we're doing business with. So looking forward to getting that set up. So, all right, comments and concerns from school board members. So Ms. Purvis, we will start with you.
I have been sick, so I haven't really been involved too much, but I know Bedford Primary had a reading time, which was awesome. I was supposed to be there, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it. And this coming week, Mr. Dupere and I are going to be at Boonesboro Elementary for a PTA Q&A. So I'm looking forward to that this coming week.
All right, Dr. Hubach?
Yeah, I did get to participate in the reading time at Bedford Primary School, and I got to read to a kindergarten class, and it was invigorating from a real simple point that I was able to read to them from the same books that were read to Michael Phelps when he was in kindergarten by a friend of mine who has passed away from Alzheimer's. But the association there and looking at the potential of those kindergarten students, right? And I imagine that that's what motivates kindergarten teachers every day, you know, and first grade and second grade and all the way up through 12th, is to see the potential of the students unpackaged right before your eyes. And you never know how they're gonna turn out, but you never would have envisioned that Michael Phelps would have done what he did in the Olympics and those things, and yet she had a part in that. Even up to post-Olympics, was invited to participate in his ceremonies back in Baltimore. So anyway, I had a great day reading to the kids. I think they enjoyed it too, but who knows.
Good deal. Mr. Daniels?
Kind of piggyback off that. Again, it's been said several times that we are ranked 36th in this state. And I mean, that's just a testament to, I mean, the staff, the teachers, parents, maybe a little bit this board, but this and the students. And I think the important thing is when you talk about potential, it's in there. We just got to get it out of them. And from the high school and middle school kids with maybe the cell phones, we're getting they're becoming more engaged. There was a complaint that I got about the cell phones. They said, hey, the classes before we get going are a little bit louder. And the kids are, I'm like, yeah, they're talking, they're engaging. They're learning how to interact, so that they're learning even with that. And so I think that we're starting to see some momentum with that and everything that we're doing, and hearing about, you know, how the testing and how the rankings are gonna move going forward, and say, well, we were already ahead of this and doing some of this stuff. So that's a really good thing. So I just want to, that's a big congratulations to everybody involved in Bedford County Public Schools. So I just want to say thank you to that. Kind of back to some superintendent comments. You mentioned some of those executive orders and just some of the policies that come out, and there gets to be a lot of questions sometimes as if we have certain policies or do we do this? We all get asked in the community if we do, and a lot of times, and we do. We also try to be on the forefront in the IGA if we don't have something or something that we think could benefit our schools. Executive staff will bring that to us. We will make suggestions. Other board members will say, hey, we should be looking at this. And or just best practices that are either around the state or the country that we look at. But if a parent or community member is concerned, or if we have a policy or if something is mentioned in the policy, we on board docs, you can search our policies. There's a keyword search and it may be mentioned a lot. You might have to do a little bit of searching, but if you look up and click on that to make sure it's a policy, it will be there. And you can pull those up, you can see revisions, and just to make sure that we do that. And part of the IGA, we review policies every meeting, and we try to bring up to 8 for informational. And then we vote on those, any changes, that sometimes there's changes in state law, sometimes there's just things that we do as a division that we want to make sure are out there. So we are on it, and we just want to make sure that is known, and you can check that out on our board docs. Mr. Dupere mentioned some analysis that needs to be done for us as a division, whether that be looking at rezoning. We've talked about it as a board. There's a lot of development in certain areas. There's not a lot of development in others. We have some overcrowding, and we have some things that are going to happen. We've been talking about schools and efficiency and capacity and all these things. And I have a couple of concerns. When we talk about the analysis, my concern is who's doing the analysis on this? Are we going to get outside people to just go, hey, just looking at it on paper, this is what I see. Great, I think that's good. But then we need others, of course, to come in and say, yeah, but we're not willing to do that. I mean, I know on Finance Committee, we've talked about there's things. We want every option out there. Doesn't mean we're going to do it. But it's important that the public knows that could be an option. We just don't want to move forward with that. We need speed on these things, but we need accuracy as well. 3 years seems like a long way for me, just hearing it. And maybe it won't be 3 years. Maybe we get some things that make a lot of sense and we can get that information out to the public. There will be some transition time. My concern is 3 years starts putting us, I mean, we're right there with reversion and the other things that we have to do, and we've got a lot of big decisions to make. And we are here now. And it's important that we lay that groundwork, whether we're not here in the future or whatever. It's important that we do when we're trying to set Bedford County's public schools up for, protect what we've done in the past, but gear up for what we need to do for the future. I think that's really important. So some things, you dread sometimes pulling that Band-Aid off. It's always worse when you're thinking about it before you actually do it. So I think we need to do that because we also want to not kick the can down the road and to delay the inevitable on some things, because if we can stop some of the bleeding on some of the things that we have, we can focus on what we talked about. How do we get past 36? How do we get in the top 10? How do we be, what was the best category you can be in that, in those rankings? Distinguished. All of our schools distinguished. How do we be, that city on the hill? How do we be that light for the rest of the Commonwealth to say that, you want to be like Bedford County, and your phones will be ringing off the hook with people A, trying to move here, and B, saying, what are you guys doing? And I think that's a good thing, and that's where I would like us to be, and we've got some time to do that. So I'm excited about the prospect of these things. I know it's going to be hard work, but I think that we're up for the task. That's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I first want to commend Mr. Dupere and his staff for that New London Academy propane leak we had this week. Extremely well handled. Everyone was very safe. Discovered it during drop-off time. Kids weren't even aware. The Forest Volunteer Fire Department coming in with their lights off, so it didn't alarm anybody. You guys did that very well, I'm sure, working with the safety team there. And I've talked to Mr. Hager about this. Coming from that, I love to see us utilize more carbon monoxide, propane detectors, that sort of stuff in school. So we're not finding out about that from a somebody walking in going, man, it smells weird in here. So I would like to kind of look and make sure we're up to code, not having to do, what Covington Middle School is having to go through right now where, they had to shut down for weeks. If we can, a little detector might help out with that. Also, I was able to take a tour of Huddleston Elementary School. Awesome students. We got to meet a lot of the teachers there. That was a lot of fun. I did have a couple concerns when I was going there. I think Mr. Hagley's already addressed some of them. We had some water leaking onto the ceiling tiles, and I think that came from the HVAC, and we're working on that. Other thing I just want to kind of review there, they had a couple little security concerns that I wanted to kind of look into. I know we've done security reviews, making sure all the cameras are working, making sure, there's no access places where you shouldn't be able to access, just those kind of things on Huddleston there. But great school, great people. I really like having to visit out there.
All right. Couple repeat things, but I'm gonna say them anyway. First of all, the Yonder pouches, appreciate the update on those. I did take 3 tours last week. I did Forest Elementary, Forest Middle, JF, all positive results, just overall. But then when you brought up the fact of the Yonder pouches, just to repeat what you said, the students are more engaged. And it's not just the teachers and the administration, it is the students who are also giving positive feedback of, yes, I hated it at first. What were you doing? But now they're starting to see the benefit. Even had one tell me, I actually had somebody talk to me I have never spoken to, and I've been here 4 years. So it's making a difference. So that's good. Good feedback. Mr. Hagler, the good news is I found somewhere to spend that extra $100,000. So I'm going to make a plug. I've already talked to Mr. Hill about it. I would definitely want to put it on the needs. For those that have not been to Forest lately, I kindly invite you to come over and take a look. We are now walking to school in some cases. We've got a beautiful new neighborhood across from Jefferson Forest, which is directly beside Forest Elementary School. And the contractor went and they built this beautiful sidewalk. Our kids are using it, our parents are using it, and at the end of the property, it stops. And it just goes right onto the dirt. And so in speaking to the principal and just driving by it every day, there's a need, and I don't know what our options are, do we work with the state or whoever, but I would really like to take care of that so our kids have a continued sidewalk to get to school safely. And so just want to make sure we've got that, and I'll keep talking to you guys from a facility standpoint. I mean, we've got 100 extra K, so just want to make sure we talk about that. And it's for safety concerns too, and just the fact of if we've got more students who are walking, we may be able to reduce the bus, that we're using for that neighborhood. So, participated in groundbreaking last week at Bedford Primary. It was funny. I was walking with Ms. Dellis, and we were just talking about all of the things that are happening at Bedford Primary. So the community should not complain about anything at Bedford Primary for years to come. And what I mean by that is Ms. Dellis showed me the new floors in both the cafeteria, the classrooms, the painting that is going to take place. They were there measuring the murals to make sure we don't go over those. And, she was all excited because the salmon colored doorways will no longer exist after this summer. So full paint, in the hallways. Even talked about the little, arrows that were coming up off the floor. We're going to have those floors professionally cleaned. I've done that in several of my buildings for the company I work for. It works. They look brand new, so I'm excited about that. And then, like I mentioned, the groundbreaking for the gymnasium. So really a lot of attention has been paid to Bedford Primary. It's been a long time coming, but I'm excited for what's going on over there. We talked about Yonder pouches. One of the things that I want to make sure we're looking at from the federal guidelines that has been handed down. I know in the past I've brought it up where on day one when our parents show up to sign up for school or to put information in, there's an option for male, female, and other. And I've always been told, well, it's the software company that we use. We gotta do something about that. So the software company has gotta meet us somewhere in the middle because federal guidelines say male, female. And so I wanna make sure we're on that, we're looking at it, to make sure there's no question, on the first day of school. So that's why I wanted to mention it in March. And that's not just for that software. I want to make sure we're looking at it from an overall school system. And the last thing I wanted to say is happy anniversary. Nobody has brought it up, but today is our 5-year anniversary of when the world went absolutely crazy over COVID.
It's true.
And I just want to say, I am thankful 5 years later, I look around and one of the things that we talked about tonight was BCPS policy INB. Just a lot of what took place 5 years ago really drove discussions. And the people who are sitting at this table right now as board members and on the phone, a lot of that was due to 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I would have never said I'm thankful. But there's always a reason for what happens and good comes out of it. And so I just wanted to say happy anniversary. We made it. All right, let's see. The last thing, the zone, and Mr. Daniels touched base on this, and I apologize. I should have said it when I talked about going through Forest Elementary. We've got 3 elementary schools, New London, we've got Otter River, and we've got Forest Elementary. London, Forest Elementary, pretty much at capacity. I know the 80%, 89, whatever. But when I walk through an elementary school and I'm seeing closets that are now classrooms, and then I've got a school 4 miles, if that, 5 miles, with empty classrooms, to me, that's unacceptable. And so I think we as a board, and y'all have heard me say it last month, the month before, and I'm going to continue to stand on this soapbox, it's time to do something with those 3 elementary schools. We've got new construction going in across from New London Elementary. And look, I know it's not going to be an easy discussion, but it is not fair to our students or our staff to literally have to use a closet as a classroom. And that's just one example. But my whole thing is if we've got empty classrooms, which we do at Otter River, and the efficiencies that we can drive by, evening those classrooms or assignments out, it's the right thing to do. And so I just want to encourage the staff. I don't think this is a zoning at this point. I absolutely think it's time to discuss zoning in that 2 to 3 year period. We don't have 2 to 3 years with Forest and New London, just based on the construction. We're at capacity, got kids in a closet, and we've got more construction taking place across from JF and next to Forest Elementary, which is just more kids. In New London, I think they're gonna build. I mean, they're across the road, the dirt's there, the trees are down, I mean.
Give me a couple years.
Yeah, so, but we need to take care of it. We need to just stop kicking it down the road. We've got to address, and I'm open to all ideas. It doesn't have to be, we've got a primary in Bedford Primary, Bedford Elementary. If we need to use one of those schools as a primary and one as think outside the box. To me, we've got empty classrooms and we need to take advantage of it. So, all right. That's all. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Hubach. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Yeah, do the same.
think about it.
We all want to stay off.